Good afternoon and welcome to my video on the historical revisionism of the Quaker executions in the 17th century. The article that I am reviewing today is titled Quaker Executions as Myth and History. It is an interesting article that begins with describing the executions of 4 Quakers between 1659 and 1661. The executions were carried out because the Quakers would not remain separated from the Puritan Commonwealth. They spread the word of a final judgment and believed God dwelled within them, guiding their actions towards the end times. John Miller, the author of the article A Suffering People, English Quakers and Their Neighbors, published in the journal Past and Present, describes the Quakers' suffering, and I quote, "The Friends seemed to court violence by outrageous and provocative behavior. They went naked as a sign, reproving townspeople in the marketplace for the wickedness, and denouncing ministers as hirelings in front of their own congregations." As dramatic as Pastina makes this, the author of the main article, the article is not primarily about the executions. Rather, the article covers in depth the historical revisionism that the Quaker historians use to essentially erase their violent past so that they can embrace their new pacifist identity. She acknowledges that the Quakers wrote about the Puritan intolerance, especially to redirect the attention away from the actions that contributed to the executions. She highlights that we find Puritan intolerance in popular misconceptions of the Puritans, and this grew in a myth that embedded itself into national history and identity. The simple hypocrisy that the Puritans moved to America for religious freedom only to forbid it to the Quakers is a consequence to the Quaker historiography. They revised the past to meet the changing Quaker needs, and historians painted the executions as persecuting Puritans and passive Quakers who died for their principle. We see this revisionism as work in Glenn Crother's work, To Bear Our Righteous Testimonies Against All Evil, Virginia Quakers' Response to John Brown. Published in the journal Quaker History, he describes Quakers as anti-slavery activists and an embraced position in the Quaker community. He describes Quakers' slavery opposition grew out of their pacifism. Revisionism transitioned into self-indulgence, however, as those who thought of themselves as publishers of the truth. They thought of themselves as prophets and eventually martyrs. This is even seen in the 18th and 19th centuries, as Anne Verplunk points out in her work, The Silhouette and Quaker Identity in Early National Philadelphia, published in the Winterthur Portfolio. So as we see in the case of the Quaker executions, historical revisionism, especially brought out in the light of Pastina's article, shows us how history can change over time with a simple stroke of a pen. The Quakers proved this by changing history to fit their needs and eventually misleading an entire nation's history. Revisionism is dangerous and is even more dangerous in the wrong hands. The persecutors become the persecuted. To combat against incorrect revisionism, historians must rely on empirical research, basing this research on truth and primary source documentation. Thank you for watching my video, and I look forward to your feedback. God bless.